Welcome back, craftsmen, to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast, where we are always on the level. We're your hosts. I'm Brother Samuel.
I'm Brother Gabriel.
And I'm Brother Ryan.
And we're just a bunch of Masons trying to figure out our place in this fraternity. Craftsmen, we have a very special episode for you today. Today we're going to take the podcast in a different direction. After sitting down with all these guys, we're going to have some fun. Have you ever sat there and you really wondered, what is it about this fraternity that, we talk a big game. We talk about all these big things that Masonry does for us, all of these, our symbolism. But where do those things actually fit into our daily lives? Well, I'll tell you what, craftsmen, we're going to find out. I think because we're pretty young Masons ourselves, we don't have the answers for you. But I'll tell you what, we're going to find them. So craftsmen, starting with this episode and going forward, we're going to pose a question. Something we're going to think about. And then we're going to look forward and we're going to find guests and topics to help us answer that question. And then at the end, we're going to see if we've learned anything. Sound good to you guys?
Yeah, sounds great.
So my first question to you all is, does being a Mason make me a better man?
Do you want to take that question, or do you want it to go around the room first?
Well, I think we should go around the room first and see. So I pose that question to you, Gabe. What do you think about that?
Does Masonry make me a better man?
And I don't mean it figuratively. I mean it literally.
Yes. Yes, it does. Because Masonry has allowed me as a man to think and conduct myself in a certain way to where I always have to do what's better. Now, I choose to say better and not right, because I think that's a very important distinction. And what I mean by that is there are certain situations you'll run into in your life as a man where what might be better for you might not be right for your wife or your kid or your work, or what might be right for your work or your extended family or something might not be better for you, your wife, your kid, or your family unit. It's one of those things where it takes a lot of thinking when you make a decision, and I think Masonry has helped give me the understanding to help make those decisions better. Like when we talked about on a previous episode of when my wife was in the hospital, and when I first found out too, or earlier when she was pregnant. There are plenty of times we see in our society of many lesser men either becoming stale and bitter because of that, or completely abandoning in the return. And I never saw any reason to think like that anyway, but even through Masonry helped me learn that there's no justification for abandonment, for shirking your duty, for being false to your oaths, being false to a promise. There's none of that in Masonry. I mean, me personally, I take Masonry and its oath binding to a very, extreme. When I took my oaths, I consider them binding. And as we talk about, and as I always tell people who ask about what Masonry means, is that my pledge to keep a secret or my pledge to conduct myself in a certain way is important. And it's the value of promising something. It doesn't matter how trivial the promise may seem to other people or how trivial what you're promising to keep secret actually is. It's that you have used the teachings of Freemasonry, which you already should be coming to Freemasonry with a good foundation. And then Freemasonry helps give you the tools to expand upon that. I already came to Freemasonry believing that my word is my promise. And this just reinforced that.
So here's my question, though. And I'll give you my answer here in a little bit. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a piece of it that I haven't questioned. You and I might be a little biased because we did come from a Masonic youth organization. So we were being taught during the apex of our life when we really were starting to accept all of these, the formulating years of your life, you know. We were part of an organization that taught us how to be strong, upright young men, which then walked us into being Masons. You know, we took the path of least resistance by having that. My question is, I'm kind of excited to hear from Brother Ryan, who does not have that background, that you're the unbiased man in the room at this point, at least on this show. Do you think being a Mason makes you a better man?
I mean, yes and no. It kind of goes back to Gabe's point. I mean, I see Masons as, or joining the fraternity and becoming one of the Masons as, it's kind of one of those books of like, choose your own adventure. Hey, you chose to knock at the door. Okay, go to page 74. Okay, hey, you decide to continue. Now go back to page 36. And we've always said that Masonry is what you put into it plus tenfold. And I mean, you're right. I came to Masonry because my grandpa, after his passing, and because I kind of wanted to live in his legacy and kind of remember him and whatnot. And as you know, I came from Mummy Lodge, Northern Light, and then got into it. It was a new fun toy that I loved and spent many years there, and then just kind of reevaluated my life and kind of jumped out of it. But that's more the story, and you can listen to that episode at a different time. But Masonry helped me because it taught me different ways to look at life. Hey, if I really wanted to be a leader, okay, cool. I can start talking to these brothers that have jobs that, hey, they're the president of this company, or they've led this company and they know how, and they can help me. Or if it's just, hey, you know what, I really want to be a worker, be cool. They'll help me out and stuff. There is no real book that you get or guide after you become a Master Mason goes, okay, here's how to become a better man. Because everyone's different. But I feel like Masonry helped give me the tools to learn the path I wanted to take. I mean, I started out as Tyler, and then I jumped to senior deacon, and then I jumped back to senior steward, and then I jumped to secretary. Each position that I was as an officer in, no matter what Blue Lodge it was, taught me something different. Like, obviously I can't say the duties of each officer position, but the Tyler taught me to be a little bit patient, be on my guard. The senior deacon helped me establish my communication skills. Senior steward helped me improve my, I don't know the word, outgoingness, talking to new brothers, being that face of the organization a little bit before someone actually takes their steps. And now secretary, even though it's hard right now because it's brand new, I know just like the other three positions, it's kind of like a hill. It gets hard, and then I finally figure it out, and I start going at a pace, and I become a pro at it. Right now, and any brothers listening that think, oh, secretary, all you do is take the meeting minutes. There is so much more behind. I told the brothers, yep, I can do secretary. I had it in my mind where that's all you got to do. I can do that. I can take meeting minutes. And then day one of being secretary, some of the past masters was like, well, you got to do this. And I went, oh shit.
Yeah, you signed up for...
And I looked at my wife, my newly married wife, and I went, I am so sorry. And she goes, yeah, this is why I told you not to do it. And I go, yeah, I'm learning to listen to you more often. So
well, your job as the secretary is to be, you are debatably, while the master is in charge of the lodge, no good master makes it through his term without a fantastic secretary.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why secretaries sit in their desk for years at a time, and the masters all change because the secretary is the man.
Engineer, as a profession, I already have some of these skill sets of being organized and planning and stuff, but secretary takes it to a new level. It's not, oh, hey, yeah, I can kind of loosely. It's, no, I need to know everything in the lodge, where it's at all times. I need to know the events going on around me so I can communicate. So it's getting to that next level of communication, organization, like being able to keep doing that. I'll also having
well, I could see your face during pre-inspection when they were like, oh, hey, you guys don't have this document. And then they're like, oh, yeah, our new secretary will get that to you. And you're like, I will?
Yeah. And like, where is that?
Where's that located?
And they're like, oh, we'll find it out. And I'm like, okay. So yes, Masonry's helped me become a better man by providing me with the tools, but it hasn't helped me become a better man by just giving me a book kind of thing. And that's where I kind of think where everyone thinks like, it's just, oh, here's the book. Cool. I'm a better man. I took my 3 steps. I'm better.
Can you imagine if they gave us like a bullet pointless spreadsheet?
That'd be great. But that's, so I am actually kind of in the same boat as you, Ryan. I look at the tagline of making good men better. And that, to me, Masonry is what you put into it. It is what you choose to take from. You have to knock at the door. You have to ask to join. You're already taking the initiative to join, but that's just the beginning. Then you go through all 3 of your degrees where you have to put in the effort to receive those degrees and be proficient in those degrees. Then after that's all done, you still, it's like training for a job or for a trade, okay? You and I both went to school. You got trained for your job. They give you the knowledge and they give you the tools that you need to succeed. But if you choose to sham your job and to not put in the effort and to not give it 110%, you're not going to be very good at that job or that skill or that trade. Masonry, to me, is the same way as that. You get in. Being a Mason doesn't automatically make you a good man. It doesn't make you a better man. It doesn't even make you a good person or a better brother, per se. I know probably get some flack for this one, but not everybody in our fraternity really shows you that brotherly, fraternal love. I mean, it's just a fact. Would you call these guys at 2 o'clock in the morning? If I called a guy that has never heard of me before, let's just say, called him up, and we all know 1 or 2 like this, would he answer the phone? Probably not. But I know people like you. I could call you at 2 o'clock in the morning, Ryan, or Gabe, and you guys will pull me out of a jam because you guys...
You probably give us both a heart attack, but... yeah.
Probably. Well, let me give you a really good example of a really good brother, okay? Some of you may have seen I just got engaged recently in Cancun. But I didn't tell most people was the night before we were supposed to get on a plane, we're staying in a hotel room in Detroit, and I realized I packed the wrong blood pressure medication. I only had enough pills to get me through 3 days. We did not drive to Detroit. We were dropped off there. So I was in a conundrum of where and how am I going to get to my pills that I need, because there's no way I'm going to be able to only make 3 days worth of pills. I called Brother Ricky, and Brother Ricky drove all the way from here all the way up to Detroit just to bring me my pills, and then he drove all the way back. And he didn't even bat an eyelash. He just said, "Have a great trip, brother. I love you." Gave me a hug and then left. That's brotherhood.
Yeah.
That is what our fraternity is supposed to be about. And I'm not saying that there aren't other brothers that do that. I'm just blessed to have found a bunch of them. But I think some of the guys forget that that's what this fraternity is about. It's not about the titles. It's not about wearing the ring or the hats or any of that. It's not about the inspections. It's none of that. It's being a good brother.
Yep.
It's taking care of one another, taking care of our families. And I think the working tools themselves and our obligation that binds us together is what makes me a better man.
That is what we aspire to, though. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off if I'm cutting you off.
No,
It's
not
just
at all.
That what you're saying there is that is one of the values of Freemasonry, though, is that that's what we're aspiring to. And that's where I slightly disagree with you a little bit on that, is that I know that these other brothers have at least somewhat of the same idea as me. If they have come to this fraternity, I hope it is like, I don't want to necessarily say paradox of Freemasonry, but it's the trust of Freemasonry that you're gonna trust that other brother thinks about 90% the same as you about how to relate to that, and that the nature of what we're doing as a fraternity, that we're striving for it. We are striving for that perfect ashlar, but we're never going to be there. There are going to be times where a brother is too exhausted to answer his phone. There are going to be times where a brother, like, I'm technically on call today. I could have been called away from the podcast today to go plow snow or salt roads. And it would be not great that I got called away from the podcast, but it happens. Or a brother could get called away from a inspection dinner or something for some reason. It's not that we're all here striving for that perfect ashlar. We all have very similar ideas of striving for that perfect ashlar, and it's never going to happen. That's the whole point of what we go through and what we talk about and how we learn through Freemasonry to relate that to the world around us, I think, in terms of that.
Yeah, like we're all here because to some extent we're all like-minded. We, like you said, we all knocked. We all asked to join. Now, kind of going back to my thing is, and I agree with you, Sam, and I agree with you, Gay. The brothers don't all choose the same paths. Some brothers, like Brother Ricky and Brother Jack and you, Sam, me, Gabe, the guy group, as we call it here in Genoa, in our friend group.
The bros.
Yeah. We all chose, hey, even though we're not blood related, we are one family. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock, anytime. If, hey, I gotta get on the plane at 6 a.m. and you're calling me at 11 p.m. to come help plow your driveway because you need to go somewhere, I'm making that trip. Now, I agree with you that some brothers, now that I'm secretary, I have the list of the roster to Genoa Lodge. I could call up any single one of them. Some brothers, never even heard of me. I haven't even heard of them. I know they're kind of like, do you really need this done, or can it wait or can you ask someone else? But they chose their path. Not saying it's the wrong path.
Right.
It's just a different path.
And I don't mean it in a negative light.
Yeah.
I think the fraternity, I grew up in DeMolay hearing about the heyday, the 1900s on through, the days where if you were a Mason,
yep,
you could go to Champion Spark Plugs and you had a job. There was no questions. You were a Mason. You were in.
It kind of goes back to that Simpsons episode where like
The stone cutter.
Yeah, like, oh, you're a Mason. Okay, let me help you through
Let me
this.
fix your stuff. My thing with that is I have always tried to take our obligation to it. Maybe its most literal form. Maybe not its symbolic form that maybe we're supposed to look at it as. But I have hired several Masons working for my company when I worked for the grocery store. No questions asked. You were a Mason. You were.
Yep.
I got you hired. I got you a job. My only ask was that you gave me 2 weeks notice if you were going to quit. I have taken care of Masonic customers that I've never met with just a handshake and a, yep, I'll pay me later. I don't worry about it until I have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I once told my manager at that establishment, he said, well, why do you trust this man so much? You just handed over $60 for something that we can't, he didn't bring a receipt for. And I said, he's a Mason. He has no reason to lie to me. And he told me, well, if we go back on the cameras and he didn't buy that, you're going to have to pay for it. I said, he's a Mason. He wouldn't lie to me. And I was right.
Yeah.
I never met this man before in my life. He saw my ring, shook my hand, and we moved on from there. And I was like, I got to fix this guy. He's been wronged. We took care of it. But I mean, I think the fraternity has gone away from that. In some ways, we need to have that literal aspect to it. I think there needs to be the practical aspect where there are rights and benefits that make us better men and give us a reason to strive to be better men. And only by those of us that are in the ability to help those that are less fortunate than we are and pull them up to our level, does that truly make good men better. With tools. I mean, I was in a position to be able to give Brother Buser, Brother Race, all these guys jobs when they really needed them, brought them up to my level and gave them the same responsibility and respect that I had. And the same expectations, too. Now that we're Masons, too, we're going through all that symbology and we're going through the lodge, and that really holds us together, but I had it within my ability to help my brothers out. And it wasn't a one-way street either. They weren't just winning from that. I was hiring employees that I knew I could rely on. No questions asked. And it's funny, the owner of our store, when my boss was like, hey, he's hiring all these Masons, Gary said, yeah, hire more of them. Hire those boys. You'll never have to worry about them stealing from you. You'll never have to worry about them taking from you. He said they might take an extra smoke break every once in a while. Just leave them alone. He said they'll work the hardest for you and they're never going to steal from us. Because he was a Mason. He knew it. So...
And I really like that because you've told me that story before, and that's really good. And one of the, not counterpoints, but additions I have to that is it's that same mentality that we're also taught to bring to the rest of the world around us too, because Masonry is not meant to be an insulated, isolated box where we're only good to each other for each other's sakes. We are determined to do that to the rest of the world. And if I could share a story back to what I was saying earlier about what is better versus what is technically right. So when I was on state active duty deployment, we were deployed to a corrections facility, the Cuyahoga County Corrections Center in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to share any names, but I'm going to tell you what happened. I was assigned to a different cell block than I had normally been in. And I had gotten to know these, but even though I hadn't been there all the time, I had gotten to know these guys because we had been there for several months at this point.
Are you talking about the inmates? Or are you talking
the inmates. We got to develop with the corrections officers as well and the security teams, but as well as the inmates, because prisons really are just little mini cities.
Oh, yeah.
And so we get to know things. And there was an inmate who went for his dental exam.
Mm-hmm.
And he came back, and for the day, like as soon as he got the medication from the dental treatment, he had a terrible reaction. Terrible reaction to it.
Someone was allergic to amoxicillin.
Probably, like,
Yep.
So, and I was in a different cell block. I got a call on a radio because there was the one corrections officer said it was a disturbance. And it was a different corrections officer than was normally there. He didn't know this guy. And he was like, oh, he's just faking it. Nothing is wrong with him. He's going to stay in his cell. Half of his face was puffy and red. He couldn't see out of his eye. It was not great. And what is right by regulation is that CO can theoretically keep him there.
Right.
But it's not better. That guy is already there serving his time. He's not a disturbance. He's not rude to the corrections officers or us soldiers that are there. He's a man serving his time.
Right.
He wants to serve his time and get out.
Right.
And he doesn't need to suffer unnecessarily. And I told this corrections officer, no, I know this guy. He is having a bad reaction from his medicine. I'm taking him to medical. And I told that CO, pop this door or I'm calling medical and the security team and they'll do it for me. And he did. And I took him to medical. And the next day he thanked me and we
probably saved his life.
And we moved on our way. And it's not, I'm not doing some hero complex. I'm not seeking to get a medal or an award off of that. I didn't even write it up. I just considered it as doing my daily requirements. And that's what Freemasonry has taught me of how to interact with the world, is that I don't need to be rude to people. I also worked in the food industry for a really long time, and I got so sick of people being rude to me. I decided that I would never be intentionally rude to food service ever again. And I mean, we can get into topics of that later, but I determined, especially through my teachings through De Molay and Freemasonry, is that there's no reason to be bitterly angry with the world. Sometimes you get wronged. Sometimes you need to stand your ground. Sometimes you need to be forceful and say, no, this is not how we're going to do this because you're stepping over me. But also there are some times where you have to go out of your way to be, no, there's no need for animosity here. Yes, he's an inmate. Yes, this is our criminal justice system, but he doesn't need to unnecessarily suffer. So get him his medical, get him back. He can serve his time. And then I think he actually got out while I was still there on deployment. And he said, thanks, soldier. See you later.
Wow.
And he left. And I mean, that happens at my regular job too, working for the city. I have to help people. I have to block the road for derelict vehicles. I have to traffic direct to keep people safe. And Masonry goes into that whole thing of you got to try. You got to attempt to achieve that perfect ashlar, knowing you're not going to achieve it. But you've got to try. You've got to try to be nice to these people. You've got to try to treat everybody with respect and dignity. You've got to try to live your life in a way that's going to be beneficial for society as a whole. And that's the thing about Freemasonry and about that, is that sometimes values mean different things to different people. To me, a benefit to society is less interference from certain people, less interference from people of authority, whereas some people don't view it that way. Some people believe that certain things need to be authoritated and written out to change things for the betterment of society. And that's where people get into differing, and that's where Masons wind up on different sides of political conflicts and different sides of military conflicts and different sides of societal conflicts. And
But to also be fair, the fraternity itself does not get involved in
correct.
conflicts.
And that, I think, is one of the better teachings of that,
right.
of the fraternity, is that knowing that you don't bring the fraternity into that. You're not like those of us in Freemason. I mean, there are 3 or 4 members of this lodge that are in the State Guard with me. We are not Freemason soldiers. We are soldiers who are also Masons.
Right.
Like my commanding officer at one point, he is a Mason, but he's not a Mason then my commanding officer. He's a commanding officer and then a Mason.
Right.
Or much like our soon-to-be newest entered apprentice, when we were interviewing him, he's a prior Marine.
Well,
really
once
discharged.
a Marine, always a Marine.
Once a Marine, always a Marine. Yeah, but he said all of his good leaders were Masons.
Yeah,
and from someone who is a not full-time federal service like him, but part-time military service, there is a big difference between good leadership and bad leadership in the military. And it's so refreshing to hear someone younger than me come in and say, these guys were Masons. They were great guys. I want to be like them. I want to join Lodge.
Well, and I'm excited. I'm hoping once we get him through his degrees in a couple weeks, we'll get him on the show and we'll get his thoughts process on joining Masonry. But
absolutely.
But to move on.
Well, real fast before we do move
absolutely.
on, because Gabe, as you were kind of talking, I was listening to your story, and my brain, it works thousands of different stories at a time, and it's confusing. But I was also thinking, like, I can see that you're a past master because you know how to assess situations. You know how to neutralize, but you also know the chain of command. You didn't just say, oh, this guy was in the wrong, I'm going to write him up and make his life a living hell, because he didn't know the inmate. But you're able to sit there and go, okay, we need to, it's not him being an ass, it's him needing help. We need to all come together and calm down. And you're able to do that, which is something that I think the Worshipful Master is one of the skills you are required to learn. You're running a lodge of 8+ people. Like, you're going to have people butting heads up. Well, this is the way it should run. Well, this is the way it should run. And there are some people in the fraternity, just like everywhere else in the world, that are stubborn. No, you're not right. My way is right.
I'm raising my hand right now. That's me. I'm that guy.
I mean, I just had that whole thing in Lodge recently.
And I'm getting better, but I'm also that way. And as the Worshipful Master, one of your duties is to make sure that the craft, how do I say it, is happy, is still a brotherhood, and not being a family fighting each other.
Well, let there be no contention amongst brothers. I was trying to think of the wording.
Yeah, and I couldn't think of it.
It's almost interesting. It's almost how all of the positions are teaching you how to do that before you get to the master. The steward's position teach you stewardship. The deacons teach you communication and procedure. The junior warden teaches you early administration and relaying communication. The senior warden teaches much more of a leadership role.
Yep.
It's your second in command.
And the Worshipful Master
teaches
the
worshipful
leadership. Is the Worshipful Master.
And then I kind of go back to the thought I've always had is nothing is given to you without you asking. Nothing in life is just handed to you and it's perfect and you can just use it. You have to understand it. You have to ask for it. Sometime in your years of being a Mason, you asked to join those officers, to go through that commitment and slowly go up the chain of command and then become the Worshipful Master. Sam, you did the same thing. I did the same thing. And that's where I think Masonry, going back to our original question, is, does Masonry make you a better man? It does, because you are asking to become a better man.
Do you remember when we had the interview with A Time for Fellowship?
Absolutely.
And they answered this exact question. They talked about, because they weren't in DMLA,
No,
Matt
they
and
weren't.
Andrew weren't in DMLA, and they talked specifically to us during our interview of what changed in them after they joined.
Okay.
And they were talking about how and how it changed them, how it made them better. And even John Tate and Drew DeVore, Brother Dewey, and they were talking about how it made them better men. And I to really circle back and answer our question is that, does Masonry instantaneously, like some sort of pseudo-religious epiphany, suddenly make you like,
Or
and not
magic
part
wand.
you are a better man, magic wand you
No.
to being a better man? Yes. The answer is no. Does that literally happen? No. But what Freemasonry does is
It gives you the tools.
it gives you the tools to expand upon a foundation you already have. Now, can Freemasonry help you build that foundation if you don't already come with that foundation, though? I think that's an interesting question to also ask. Because there are plenty of people we encounter in all of our lives, friends that I have, friends that you have, who we would not bring to lodge because
Sure.
they either don't appreciate it, don't understand it, or don't want to be part of it. So I would have to say is that Freemasonry can make some good men better men, because there are good men I know in my life who would not join Freemasonry, but that doesn't make them not good men.
But if they did join, do you think it would make them better men?
I think there has to be a certain type of foundation you come here with.
Yeah, and that's where to answer your question, yes and no. It depends on the man. We're not all the same.
Right.
Some people will come through lodge, take the meetings to heart, and do something with it and make themselves better. Other people will go through lodge and go, what the fuck was that? I'm never doing any of that again.
I'm going to start keeping a bleeper with me, so I can just hit it randomly every time you talk, and it'll probably line up with your dialogue.
Listen, I'm sorry. I'm not.
Just try to keep it to a minimum so I don't have to put an explicit label.
How many F-bombs do I get until we're there?
No more.
Shit. What about S-bombs?
No more.
So, and that's where this answer is simple but complex. It's both. It's yin and yang when you really think about it. Are you okay over there?
Yeah.
Or are you just blowing your nose?
This answer is simple but not. This answer is yin and yang.
Listen.
I'm sorry, are you an engineering major or a philosophy major?
Yes, I'm both.
Well, I think we may have found our baseline. So, and I agree with you. I agree with both of you. I think there's a certain level of moral foundation you have to have. I would argue that perhaps maybe that foundation doesn't need to be a fully formed foundation. I just have to be able to look into your soul and know that deep down you're good.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. I mean, I've always figured I was a good judge of character. I can usually feel it out.
There's an interesting story that I have about that for some time.
That's a later episode, though.
But
Maybe.
I think the teachings of Freemasonry, as long as you have that basic foundation there of being a decent human being, you're not going out and kicking puppies and pushing old ladies down while they're crossing the street and what have you. I think Freemasonry gives you those tools, and then we take those tools and we build up that house inside, whether we're going to be good. And you can either be a really good craftsman and you can be hard at work building your house, or you can be Joe Schmo that's sitting in the porta potty 6 times a day, shamming off his job. And, we all know that guy. We know the guy that's driving the Bobcat in a circle the whole time, making it look like he knows what he's doing, as Brother Gabriel raises his hand. But I think this is going to be an interesting question, because I'll have to go back and listen to the Time for Fellowship episode, because that'll be interesting. But we also have a very interesting lineup of guests and topics for the next few weeks, where we're gonna ask this question. We're gonna keep asking the same questions we always ask, because I really want to keep getting the histories of our guests. But we're also gonna ask them some new questions, and we're gonna find out how Masonry changes their lives and affects their lives literally. And we're gonna have them help us answer this question. And I think by the end we'll have an answer, and we'll sit down and we'll talk about it again.
Yeah.
And we'll see if we've changed, if our minds have changed on that. So I know, looking forward to it. We're going to be having your dad on the show. I'm really looking forward to that happening.
I think that's going to be a great interview.
I think you might learn some things that you didn't know, knowing your dad.
I hope.
So, Brother Ryan, you have anything you'd like to add?
Sorry for all the swear words. I will work on getting better. I will use Freemasonry to make myself a better man.
Well, there we go. We'll see.
Very good.
If not, I'm going to have to institute a swear jar. So,
Babe, we're going to be broke.
Craftsman, thank you for tuning in to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast.
And Craftsman, in addition to it, we have something we'd like to ask of you. If you've been a long-time listener to our show, or maybe you've just started listening, if you've gotten any value from our shows in the past, and if you plan on continuing to listen to us in the future, if you look down in the description of this show on your podcast player, you're going to see a little link there. If you could click on that link, it's going to take you to a survey. If you could just fill out the survey for me, let us know how we can improve. How can we make this show better? Please be honest. It doesn't help us if you give us 10 stars if you only think we're a 5-star show. And please, if you could, fill out all the information, and count that 2 people that take the survey will win 2 Mason gear hats. They're pretty cool looking hats. I picked them out myself. They're what I would wear. But if you could just take that survey for us listeners, we would greatly appreciate it. It's going to be up for about the next month, maybe 2 months. So.
And as always, Craftsman, we really appreciate the likes, listens, and comments on our Facebook page. If you can find it within the length of your cable tow, to give us a like on Facebook or a like on YouTube or any of your streaming platforms, we'd really appreciate it.
And remember, Craftsman,
keep your working tools in order.
And always be
on the level.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the Grand Lodge of Ohio, its officers, or any of its jurisdictions. They only reflect those of the hosts or guests.